You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, one will be provided to you at no cost. Most of you know that as one of your Miranda warnings. But what would you do if you committed a crime, allegedly, got taken into trial, and was told by the judge that, sorry, not sorry, we don't provide attorneys outside of capital crimes? Well, that's exactly what happened to Clarence Gideon back in 1961. And that's our case for today, Gideon v. Wainwright. So let's go ahead and take a look at the facts of this case. But before we do, don't forget, if you like this channel, do me a big favor and hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, go ahead and give the like button a tickle just till he turns blue. And with that, let's take a look at what happened to Clarence. Clarence Gideon was born in 1910 down in Hannibal, Missouri, and spent the majority of the first 40 or so years of his life dropping out of school, being a drifter, committing petty crimes, and marrying 4 different women. But on June 3rd of 1961, he was actually down in Florida, and on that particular day, about $5 in change and a few bottles of beer and soda were stolen from a place called the Pool Room, which was a pool hall and beer bar. There was also about $50 or so that went missing from a jukebox. A local resident said that they had seen Clarence leaving this pool hall with wine in hand and pockets full of cash. The police later arrested Gideon for this crime at a local tavern. Gideon was presented to the judge, at which time he said, "I'm poor as hell, I have no money, I have no lawyer. I need you to appoint one for me." And the judge told him, at least somewhat apologetically, that sorry, under Florida law, the courts are not allowed to appoint attorneys for defendants except in capital crimes, which are those that involve the death penalty. As a result, Clarence here was required to defend himself, which is an action called pro se. And unfortunately, though he was noted to put up as good a defense as could be expected of someone defending themselves, he was convicted on this particular crime and was sentenced to 5 years in a federal prison. Gideon wasn't done, and so he appealed this, filing a habeas petition arguing constitutional violation. The habeas hearing was not particularly sympathetic to his arguments and denied all relief. And that's how we end up at the Supreme Court on this case. A little bit of irony there, because he filed under the pauper statute, he was actually appointed an attorney to serve as his representative to the Supreme Court. An interesting thing about this case is that it's basically a mulligan for the Supreme Court. So this court took a look at the controlling case when it came to right to counsel, and that was Betts v. Brady, which was decided about 20 years before, back in 1942. In that particular case, the facts were eerily similar to Gideon's. And in that case, the court had decided that denying an individual the right to counsel outside of something like a capital crime was a perfectly fine thing to do and didn't violate the Constitution, because the right to counsel was not so fundamental an idea of fairness that denying it was a due process violation. And because the court in Betts had decided that the Sixth Amendment right to counsel was not so fundamental to a fair trial, it actually said that we cannot then apply the 14th Amendment to incorporate it to the states. This court called bullshit and stated there was ample evidence and precedent to support the idea that the Sixth Amendment right to counsel is a fundamental and necessary concept to a fair trial in the United States. And because it was such, incorporating it to the states through the 14th Amendment was wholly appropriate. And in doing so, this court pointed specifically to another case in the past, Powell v. Alabama in 1932, which specifically said that the right to the aid of counsel is of this fundamental character, this fundamental nature toward fairness. And the whole concept is basically this. Law is hard. It is intricate and difficult, and there are rules for rules with exceptions that have rules. And you can be an intelligent and educated person, but if you do not understand the law and the way that it functions and how to apply it, you walk into the defense of yourself unarmed and in all likelihood incapable of fully defending yourself in a way that will work. The court took a look at the Sixth Amendment and said that left without the aid of counsel, a defendant may be put on trial without a proper charge, be convicted upon incompetent evidence or evidence irrelevant to the issue. This person, the layman, lacks the skill and knowledge adequate to prepare his own defense, even though he could have a perfect one. In short, you need a lawyer to do the law. And without one, no matter how innocent of the charge you may be, you risk conviction. Interestingly, 22 separate states wrote in as friends of the court to the Supreme Court for this case, arguing that the Betts decision was so bad that it should be overturned. Think about that for a second. 22 states wrote and said, you guys need to fix this. It's a cluster and a half. And thankfully, in this particular instance, the Supreme Court agreed and overturned the Betts decision. And in doing so, it reinstituted the concept, the fundamental nature of the Sixth Amendment right, and that is why, even in a state court, you have the right to an attorney, and if you cannot afford one, one will be provided to you at no cost. So what happened after the Supreme Court's decision? Well, in Florida alone, 2,000 people were freed from the prisons because they hadn't been offered an attorney at their trial. Gideon himself was put on trial by the state of Florida again, but this time he had a lawyer, and that for him made all the difference. After only an hour of deliberation, he was found not guilty and released. After being released, he went back to behaving the same way he pretty much had his entire adult life. He got married for a 5th time, but died of cancer in Fort Lauderdale on January 18th, 1972 at the age of just 61. His family buried him back in Hannibal in an unmarked grave, but later the ACLU ended up putting up a granite headstone for him with a quote from his attorney, "Each era finds an improvement in law for the benefit of mankind." So that's Gideon v. Wainwright and your ability as a citizen to access the services of an attorney even where you can't afford one. So I hope you enjoyed the discussion, and go ahead and reach out into the comment section down below and let me know what you think. Do you think the courts have it right, and that to actually have a fair trial, you need an attorney? And if so, is it the place of the government to provide one? Go ahead and let me know what you think, and until we meet up again, I hope everyone is well.